Hey, good morning, y'all. Josh is Severe Weather here to talk about the weather upcoming here over the next week and a half as we approach the Christmas season. And I really appreciate y'all joining me. I hope you've had a blessed week. Just want to ask you all, what do you get when you cross a vampire with a snowman? Frostbite. All right, I'll keep my day job as a meteorologist. All right, folks, I'm going to share my screen with you all. And let's talk about what's going to be a very interesting winter weather setup here later on next week and through Christmas and perhaps even into the following week, right up leading to New Year's. I've talked about it for several days, really all the way back to the beginning of December, potentially historic cold dropping southward from Canada over the next several days. We've had several storms in the northern United States, one in the plains, one in the northeast. All of that snow on the ground is helping air that's coming down from the North Pole and from Siberia to get colder and colder as it drops southward. As that happens, we have what I think is going to be perhaps one, if not two storms developing across the southern United States and moving up the East Coast. And the indices are there for this kind of storm track. The details are not there yet, but we may be looking at not one but two, perhaps, winter storms around the Christmas time frame. And if you're in the western United States, you're not immune to the snow either. Around Seattle, Portland, we've got to watch out for potential snowfall, maybe in a couple of waves as well, maybe even some ice in the valley area. So that's something we're going to be watching for starting early next week. Now, we are looking at the skill of forecasting for the winter. And we're now getting into that 7 to 10 day range when the pattern is recognized to be maybe more favorable for winter weather. Before 10 days, it's really too uncertain to try to pin down any sort of possibilities or even details. I mean, the pattern certainly is starting to come into what I believe is going to be a pretty historic pattern for us here in the southern and eastern United States and the Central Plains for that matter too, where it's going to be very, very cold. But it is still quite some time before I can give you guys any kind of snow totals or talk about where the heaviest snow is going to fall. I know we've looked at some models forecasts that have shown some pretty extreme events happening, but of course those are not going to remain the same with every single run this far out. We need to get really more into the 3 to 4 day time frame before we can make those sort of bold predictions, and that's not until next Monday and Tuesday. But we're getting closer to that. It's Friday now, so this weekend we're going to be watching the models, watching trends to see if a storm or if even two storms is going to be more likely or less likely to occur. Now, I'm going to show you guys the current National Weather Service alerts. You can see we remain with blizzard warnings across much of the northern plains and a winter storm warning across much of the interior of the Northeast. This does not include Boston, New York, or southern Connecticut or Philly, but the interior, as we look at some significant amounts of snow falling here through the day today into tonight as well. A long period of snow falling. And the more snow that falls in the Northeast, the colder it's going to be when this next wave of cold air comes in with winter weather possible. Because the more snow that's on the ground, the colder the air ends up being because that heat gets trapped within the earth, within that snow cover. So a little meteorology lesson for you guys here. I'm going to show you guys ensembles. We'll do the GFS. I know it's not my favorite model in the world, but I think it's starting to show some consistency now that we're getting closer to the event. And this is the upper air pattern and some a very strong disturbance aloft here. You can see very low heights over the upper Midwest this weekend. That is going to spread east. And then notice how much of the country is then encompassed in lower than average heights and trophy weather. As we get into early next week, there's a temporary brief warm up coming for a day or two, but the Northwest is getting crushed with another storm here, very heavy snow across the mountains. And you can see there's a disturbance in the trough here in the upper level pattern, and that means a southern track, which could be a little bit more active as this spreads east. So this is next Monday. You guys can see there's still a trough down here in the southern United States. Here's Tuesday. And then as ridging takes over in the west, very cold air spills down towards the middle of next week. And you guys can see these heights dropping considerably. This is the polar vortex dropping down into the upper Midwest next Thursday and getting much, much colder across the central United States on Thursday and the eastern United States Friday into Saturday. This right here is a signal for potentially a major East Coast storm. Where it's centered is going to determine who gets the big snowfall. Mason-Dixon line, that is a northeast snow signature for Friday and Saturday of next week, but some models show that farther south and west, which means the Gulf Coast and perhaps the Carolinas could see a significant winter storm as well. Again, a little too soon to make any kind of extreme calls. I know you'll run into YouTube videos out there showing one model and blizzard and all kinds of extremes. As a meteorologist, I'm going to tell you that that's just a little bit overkill at this point. It's a little too soon to make that call. So I'm just going to show you general patterns, trends, and what a few of the models show and what they're still showing, and that'll give you an idea of what I'm looking at here. This is next weekend, Christmas Eve, very cold in the Northeast. But even in the Carolinas, we're looking at some extreme cold, and certainly a signature for an East Coast storm track. As we get into Christmas Day, you'll see here's another piece of energy down here, another system coming down into the Gulf states, Christmas Day. And you'll see these lower than average heights pinching off across Louisiana and Mississippi. Yes, the exact same places that had strong tornadoes 2 days ago on Wednesday are now potentially looking at winter weather. On the 25th and 26th, Christmas Day and the following day. And that's something we're going to have to watch before the cold still locks in here, but it does start to moderate as we get towards the end of the year. But notice it's still below average here on Christmas Eve, New Year's Eve. So the cold wave that's with us does modify. It doesn't look as extreme at the very end of December, but it still will be cold nonetheless. All right, so let's take a look here at some possible snowfall amounts. And this is ensemble means. This is not any one solution. You'll see on Twitter or Facebook some pages that show one solution that says, oh my God, 20 inches of snow is going to hit us here in Raleigh, North Carolina, or Atlanta, Georgia. And what I caution against is that, while that could happen, and certainly there's a chance for that, it's way too soon to make any kind of calls like that. So here's the ensemble. It shows you guys a mean of about 50 different members, 60 different members, and shows you kind of where the snow looks like it's going to fall. So obviously here in the Northeast, we're looking at snow right on into Saturday. Another storm in the West. This will produce some heavy mountain snows, and it drops south into Oregon as we get to Sunday night and Monday. And then we see another potential for snow tracking northward into the Great Lakes. This is out ahead of our next brutal cold wave that moves into the northern United States on Tuesday and Wednesday. And you can see of all the models averaged, this is quickly advancing southeast Wednesday night and Thursday of next week, with potentially on some of the models some snow with this cold wave coming through on Thursday and Friday next week, all the way down to I-20, potentially. And then as we get to the very end of next week towards Christmas Eve, you can see definitely heavier amounts over the Northeast and yet another system in the West. So when we get to Christmas Eve and then Christmas Day, you'll see some models showing a chance for southern snow. And that's very much on the table at this point. Now it's very, very, very early to make a call as to where and how much, but I will show you what some of the models are showing at least so you can see. The GFS model yesterday at 12Z got a lot of people's attention. Very cold air mass dropping down here middle of next week. Low pressure forming off of the Carolina coast on Wednesday. Now that moves out, but you still have very warm water with cold air attacking it. And now you can see that model in particular showing accumulating snow all the way down into Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana, and then a significant storm tracking up the Outer Banks and up the East Coast. Now this is a very extreme case, seeing pressure deepen this quickly. By the way, a second storm dropping down from the northwest at the end of next week, gathering strength in the Central Gulf Christmas night, and then coming up the East Coast as well, 26th and 27th. So a rare 1-2 combination of winter weather. I'm not going to give you guys amounts with this because I think it's a little crazy, because then if you look at the next model run, you still see an East Coast storm, actually 1-2 over here on the 23rd, and then a big storm Christmas Eve across New England. But look how much farther inland this particular track is. And then the next storm is dropping down on Christmas Eve, and you can see it's not doing really anything in the deep south on the 25th and 26th. When you go to the next model run, guess what? We've got yet another system coming up. So it's back and forth here. But this is Christmas. This is the 23rd, snow in the southeast, coming up the East Coast on the 24th. We moved the low pressure system from Long Island to the benchmark over here, which means big snow for New England. Second wave coming down into Louisiana. That is, yes, snow showing up in Baton Rouge and New Orleans. Again, things can get a little bit crazy from one run to the next. But you can see potentially a big storm across the Carolinas on the 25th at night and the 26th. So there's a winter that we all have been talking about, but this is kind of another extreme model run coming up the East Coast. But this is a 1-2 before things start to eventually warm up. But this is still very cold air right on through the final week of December. A 1041 high over North Carolina. I think that is strengthened by the snowpack this model is showing. And again, that's all conditional to whether or not it snows. And then the latest GFS model run on the 6Z shows the colder air coming in on the 22nd, low pressure moving out, and then we miss the connection here. These two don't exactly phase. It'll still snow, especially if you're in the mountains on the 22nd and 23rd, but we don't see a major storm all the way down in here. What we see is two pieces of energy, one after the other, and eventually, yes, we could have snow on the East Coast, even down to the Outer Banks on the 23rd, and then a break, and then another low pressure system on Christmas Day. But notice it's not snowing in New Orleans because we have a piece of energy here and a piece of energy here. The two are not phasing. So until we have a clear understanding of how these northern and southern branch disturbances are going to phase together, if they even are, we cannot make any kind of definite call as to where it's going to snow and how much. But this model run certainly puts the South under notice on the 26th for major snow and ice, but Florida, you're looking at rain. So again, this is going to waffle 4 times a day for the next week before I can tell you exactly what's going to happen. Nonetheless, when you see model after model showing disturbance after disturbance with that cold air locked in place, it certainly does raise attention to the fact that we will have winter weather. And even if you don't get snow, you're going to get cold nonetheless. And that's something I want you all to be prepared for. But yeah, here's the 6Z. Here's yesterday's 12Z run. You'll see what I mean as far as snow totals. 24-hour snow amounts with yesterday's run were just insane across the Carolinas, Virginia, and Mid-Atlantic. You're talking 20, 30 inches of snow. And then the next model run, not showing it down in here, showing it farther up across the interior Northeast. So definitely a shift there. And then if we go to the 0Z, oh, it's starting to drop back down into Raleigh and Atlanta with accumulating snow. And then we go on to the 6Z, and now you saw it, now you didn't. Yeah, there's a little bit of snow on the 24th, but it's farther north. However, the following storm looks pretty significant for some here, even down into Texas, if it takes that track. So you get my point here. It's too soon to make a call. I like to go with a blend of the models here. This is the national blend of models, because now you're throwing in the Canadian, the European, the JMA, that's a Japanese model. And you'll see, yes, big snow here across the Northeast tonight and tomorrow, with perhaps 40 inches in the snow belt. As we get into next week, you guys can see the blend is showing, if you average everything together, some snow in the South on the 22nd, more across the Ohio Valley, and quite a bit around the Great Lakes. And then as you get into Christmas Eve, you'll see a blend of the models takes at least a chance all the way down to the Gulf Coast. So what we are seeing is a favorable trend in the South for perhaps snowfall. But again, when you're blending extreme models with models that don't show anything, you just get a very kind of puny number here, less than an inch of accumulating snow on Christmas. But that line is dropping southward on the 26th, which means it is picking up on a second system coming through. So all I can really say is just kind of stay tuned at this point. I think the big story is going to be the cold. Look at these temperature departures, 30 degrees Fahrenheit below average for an entire week across the Dakotas. That's where the blizzard's happening now. The cold air is going to spill in right on top of it. And then as we get into the deep south, we see significantly colder weather here next week, and spreading eastward as well, with perhaps the coldest with respect to average coming right around Christmas time, and maybe a couple of days around it on both sides. The GFS model looking at temperatures, these are 2-meter temperatures. You can see significant cold dropping south on Sunday, but even more significant cold dropping south next Tuesday. Air temperatures 30 to 37 degrees below 0 Fahrenheit. 42 degrees below 0 Fahrenheit on the 21st. On the 22nd, 36, 40 degrees below average, or Fahrenheit. By the way, that's the same in Celsius. If you're in Canada, minus 40, same deal. And then it still remains cold. And I'm going to take you east here and show you that Christmas Eve morning, we are looking at temperatures in the single digits and teens, maybe all the way down to the Gulf Coast. If it snows, it could even be colder. Christmas morning, single digits below 0. This is as cold as I've seen in many years, since 1989. Raleigh, 5 degrees, Richmond, 0 degrees. I mean, this is pretty extreme cold. And if you throw in the wind chill, this apparent temperature, You can see sub-zero wind chills across this entire region of the northern and eastern United States. I don't want to ignore the western United States because I think it's important to show you all that as well. We'll take a look at the cold that's spilling down here, and you guys can see cold advances to the west coast here early next week. Very cold across British Columbia. We're looking at 20, 30 degrees below average right on the US-Canadian border of Washington. It's cold on the west coast, below freezing in Seattle. With a storm coming through there, we could see some significant snow. But notice Southern California warms right back up, and by Christmas time, we're looking at upper 70s, maybe even close to 80 degrees in Southern Cal. That's the place to go if you want to escape the cold. Not Florida, but the Southwest, and especially California. All right, folks. Well, I really appreciate your time. Again, I'll show you this graphic because it's an impactful graphic, and we could see southern snow, not just one, but two waves of it here around Christmas time. Appreciate y'all's time, and I want to just let you all know that I am dedicating this forecast to the United States troops that are serving overseas. It's very easy to forget the freedoms that we have here in the United States and in other countries. But very much appreciate those who are not necessarily going to get to be with their family once again here during this holiday season. I know that's very difficult. It's quite a sacrifice that's being made. I have a lot of friends that have served in the military. Many are still overseas defending our freedoms, and even like with Operation Christmas Drop out of Anderson Air Force Base, supplying humanitarian efforts to help those in need. Very much appreciated. And, not just serving other people, protecting other people, but serving God. I mean, that's why I do these forecasts. I'm here to serve God through my gifts, and that's to be the best meteorologist that I can be. Definitely one verse that comes to mind for me is putting on the armor of God. That's Ephesians 6:10-11. And the Lord says, or it says in that book from Paul, finally, be strong in the Lord in his mighty power. Put on the full armor of God so that you can take your stand against the devil's schemes. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. Therefore, put on the full armor of God so that when the day of evil comes, you may be able to stand your ground, and after you have done everything, to stand. Stand firm, then, with the belt of truth buckled around your waist, with the breastplate of righteousness in place, and with your feet fitted with the readiness that comes from the gospel of peace. In addition to all this, take up the shield of faith, for which you can extinguish all of the flaming arrows of the evil one. Take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God, and pray in the Spirit on all occasions with all kinds of prayers and requests. With this in mind, be alert and always keep on praying for all the Lord's people. Pray also for me that whenever I speak, words may be given me so that I will fearlessly make known the mystery of the gospel, for which I am an ambassador in chains. Pray that I may declare it fearlessly as I should. And I believe that I am called to help pray for all those that are dealing with attacks from the enemy, and just to help you all out, to help myself, my family out, and praying for those troops that are dealing with evil every day and seeing things that can lead to things like PTSD and suicidal thoughts. Just pray for those troops, because they're going through things that just you really can't put words to, for that matter. Very difficult career that they've chosen, laying their lives on the line to help secure the safety of other people. And even if you are not a military veteran, I happen to be, still, I'm praying for you to put on the armor of God to serve others. If you've got family members that maybe have turned away from God, just know that I am praying for you. I have many family members that do not know Christ, and it is, in my belief, something that is very powerful. It has been to me, and I feel like the attacks of the enemy can be overcome with knowing that the sufficient grace of God is here with us, and that one day when we get to heaven, that we will be completely wiped of all of the debt that we had here on earth. Those troops that are out there serving, I really much thank you guys. I want to bless you. I want to bless you many ways if you are watching, and I do want to just share this with you guys. A Merry Christmas, and God bless our troops. thank you all so much. If you need anything, whether it be prayer, if you need some encouragement, I want to help you guys out. I've got many people on my side that are willing to pray with me for you. And if you have family members that don't know Christ, or if you don't know Christ and things are weighing you down, you're getting attacks from Satan, just know that there is a victorious way out of that. I want to help you see that. So I really appreciate your time today. Please stay warm, and I'll continue to bless you with as many videos as I can. All right, everyone, have a wonderful day. God bless you.